We've been in a series called We Declare War, the Power of Your Words. We declare war on words. We've been in We Declare War since last August, and God has really been moving in that direction through anxiety and different things that we've been facing. That God would just begin to touch our lives and our hearts, but God began to speak to us about our words and the power that we contain within the words that we speak, the words that we think, the words that we read, the words that we hear. There's power in your words. And Pastor Brandon, we started a part of this series last week, and it was called Dropping the F-Bomb. I know. That doesn't seem real nice, does it? Or something to speak from the pulpit. But why does forgiveness seem like a curse word to us? Why is it so hard to speak that word? Why does it seem like it's like a Christian cuss word? It's something we should not say. Forgiveness. The words, I forgive you, the words, forgive me, that come out of our mouth. If we would allow it. I believe in war is very strategic. Everything that we say in this war that we're fighting in with Jesus Christ and who we are as his soldiers in this war has to be strategic. And I believe that this is a time more than ever that we have to learn to use our words for his glory and for his kingdom. And when we do so, the power of God begins to reign in our lives. And forgiveness is one of the hardest words for any of us to ever utter in our lives. From the time that we were little, it is hard for somebody to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not something we're just born to do. We don't just grow as a baby and then begin to utter the words mama and dada. We are taught those words by habits from the ones that are around us that begin to speak and say mama, say dada. You know what I'm saying? Those things are repeated to your ear. These words are formed because somebody around us was speaking into our lives those things. Every word that we say came from something that was a habit in this world. Using the words forgive me or I forgive you are some of the hardest words to say. These words are not natural to come out of your mouth. They're not a natural response. They're not something you want to use on a regular basis. How many of you want to tell somebody to forgive you and ask for forgiveness when you know you've done something wrong? Rarely do we like to do that for the fact that it shows that we have to be what? Responsible for our actions. But these words have the biggest power, I believe, ever. I think the words forgive and forgive me are some of the most powerful words ever. They were uttered from the words of Jesus Christ, the lips of him. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Most of the time when we're younger, we have to be coerced into saying, I'm sorry. You know, like when you have children and that your sibling hits somebody, you know, when they're younger, we have little ones in here, but if they were to do something, what do? Tell them that you're sorry. What do you say? You know that kid ain't thinking, I'm sorry. They're thinking, I'll smack you again. Sorry is not the word that's coming to my mind. It is not a natural response for those words to come out of our mouth. This is why we say dropping the F-bomb, because asking or saying the word forgive sometimes feels like that curse word, like something we're doing wrong. It's not natural for us to say those words. It's not a natural thing to use. To use these words is more like an acquired taste. What's an acquired taste? To have an acquired taste for something means a thing that comes to be liked over time. A thing that comes to be liked over time. I know a saying that we've said, and I've heard it before when I was growing up, and I've heard it as I was coming back to the Lord. Do what's right because it's right until it feels right. Do what's right because it's right until it feels right. Say you're sorry. Ask for forgiveness because it's right until it feels right. It's an acquired taste. It's not something that you just want to do. It's not something, if I had something on my plate that I had to eat because that's all there was, I would have to acquire a taste for it, especially if it was something I did not like. Right? And sometimes we are such more easy to utter actual curse words out of our mouth than the words that we should have an acquired taste for to use. We acquire a taste for the words of the world more easily than we do the words of the Lord that He gives us to put into our mouths.
Good.
How many of you like to hear the words, forgive me, when somebody's done wrong to you? Right? You better say you're sorry. We have a funny thing in our house. That, if you don't know, my name's Pastor Jen. This is Pastor Brennan. We're the lead pastors of the house. We want to welcome you today. But in our home, between Brennan and I, we have this ongoing, we've been married 18 years this year.
Amen.
And we've been married 18 years this year. And as we've grown over time and things happen and arguments, because, we're not perfect. Well, I might be, but no, I'm just playing. So, we're not perfect. And we have arguments and disagreements. And we have a funny thing that when we know something's happened that maybe one of us has done that we might not should have said or done, like we let it blow over for a minute, and then we kind of look at one another. You sorry? No, not yet. Okay. Then we'll look about 15 minutes later. You sorry? Are you sorry? Not yet. No. But it's just it's a funny thing, but what's funny is we know when one of us has done something and give it that moment for that forgiveness and that settlement of Jesus Christ to come into our hearts to settle out, because all of us like to hear we're sorry, but not many of us like to say we're sorry.
Yes.
Not many of us like to say, forgive me. Yes. We like to hear, I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm sorry that I've wronged you. I'm sorry that I've done such and such and such. And some of us want a detailed list of what did you do? Like you missed one in there. You know what I'm saying? Because we're so worried about somebody else and what comes out of their mouth than what we're doing for ourselves and what comes out of ours. Is it because we feel like the person's actions are excused? Is that why we don't say we're sorry or ask for forgiveness? Like when somebody's done something against you and maybe you've responded in a wrong way, is it because we feel like that person's actions might be excused? So it's like I'm not gonna tell them that I forgive them because that means that they get away with what they've done. I want you to think about it. Think about your motive of your heart when you have somebody that you have things going in your heart against. Because today the biggest thing I want to talk about is the word unforgiveness. Unforgiveness. And this is what God told me. He said, unforgiveness creates an unquenchable thirst and an insatiable hunger for revenge. Unforgiveness creates an unquenchable thirst and an insatiable hunger for revenge. For to get back, to make sure that you are given your just desserts for what you've done. When all you can think of is the person who wronged you, paying for what they've done, unforgiveness sets in your heart and eats you alive. When all that you can think of is that person being proven wrong for what they've done, paying back for what they've done, and telling you they're sorry for what they've done, you have unforgiveness in your heart.
Oh my.
Good.
Unforgiveness is the cancer of the soul.
Yeah.
I looked at what cancer does. And cancer gradually eats away at everything that's good inside of the body and begins to change the cells to become tumors and different things within the body because it changes what's inside of the body and it begins to eat it alive.
Wow.
Well, unforgiveness in your heart gradually eats away at everything decent, everything good, everything true and noble and trustworthy inside of you. and it grows angerness and bitterness and mistrust and brokenness and hatred over time.
Yeah.
Unforgiveness causes you to view life and people through the lens of your wound instead of a life made whole.
Come on, Holy Ghost.
So good.
Unforgiveness causes you to look through the lens of what's been done to you instead of what God has done for you. It clouds your judgment and it derails the promises God has for you. It clouds your judgment and derails the promises that God has for you. I want you to read with me. I'm going to be going through chapter 25 of Genesis, through several of those chapters. I'm not reading the whole book of it, but I'm going to be skipping around, talking about Esau and Jacob. God brought me to that story, and I have never read it the way that I did over the last couple days and week that God has given me. And so I just want to give you some background on Esau and Jacob. So Esau and Jacob were in Rebekah's womb. And this is in Genesis chapter 25 through chapter 32. If you want to read it on your own, it's a powerful story. It's pretty awesome how God does some things in lives, and that's what we want to talk about today. But as Jacob and Esau are in the womb, I want to read to you verses 29 as we go on, because it talks about there are two nations that are in your womb, and two people from within you shall be divided, and the one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. That's what God begins to tell Rebekah as they're in the womb, and they're like fighting with each other coming out of the womb. You know what I'm saying? Like, anybody got children like that in your house? I'm not going to pick on my kid. It's my daughter's birthday today, so I'm not going to give her a hard time. So, yeah, she turns 15. I'm going to throw up. But I'm proud of her. I want to tell her thank you for your heart to serve Nevaeh Norman in this house at a young age. I appreciate you. But here we go. We have Esau and Jacob. And so they were contentious brothers from the very beginning. They had a fight. It was like a competition in everything that they did. Okay? And in verse 29 of chapter 25, it says, once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, let me eat of some of that red stew, for I am exhausted. Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, sell me your birthright now. And Esau said, I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? And Jacob said, swear to me it now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Okay? Then we go to chapter 27. And over in chapter 27 and verses 30 through 45, it talks about how as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from his presence. So here we are at this story. Now, if you know a little backstory, what happened is Jacob lied to his father because his father was blind on his deathbed. He dressed as Esau and put animal skins all over him because Esau was a hairy guy. I mean, I guess he was like a burly dude. Like, he was hairy. I mean, if you have to put animal skins up on your body, you got hair. That's all I'm saying. Like, you need a body brush. Like, for real. And so Jacob put animal skins on his body, and Rebekah was all in on it because she was all about Isaac and wanted Isaac to be blessed and wanted Isaac to have the most, right? That's called favoritism. Just letting you know. So what happens is Jacob goes in and fools his father on his deathbed to get the blessing of the father of the firstborn. And so Jacob goes in, and Esau goes in after not realizing what had happened. He has no clue what's just taken place. And it said, Esau, his brother, came in from hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, let my father arise and eat some of his son's game, that you may bless me. And his father Isaac said to him, who are you? He answered, I'm your son, your firstborn Esau. Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it? All before you came, and I blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed As soon as Esau heard these words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me, even also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." And Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." And then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" And Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him lord over you and all his brothers. I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" And Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me even so also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and he wept. Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, "Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall be your dwelling, and away from the dew of the heaven on high. And by your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck." I never really saw that verse right there. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck.
Goodness.
I believe what was being talked about right there was unforgiveness. See, unforgiveness makes you restless.
Yeah.
When you have unforgiveness in your heart, you don't sleep. I'll just tell you that. It takes away your sleep. When you have bitterness and anger and frustration in your heart, it literally takes away everything, like I said, that's good in you and eats at you every day. Hi, baby. And what happens when unforgiveness begins to eat at you at your heart? It's all you can think of. It's all you can dream of. It's all you can want to do. It's all you talk about. It's all that you begin with. And it begins to change everything inside of you. From the very, very depths of you. You want to get her? You're all right. You can get her. Here, baby. I believe that when Isaac was talking to Esau here, he was trying to explain to him that you will deal with what you have going on with your brother until you deal with it with the Lord.
Yeah. It's good.
You will deal with it in your heart until you deal with it with the Lord. And because unforgiveness is a yoke that only you can break.
Come on, Holy Ghost.
Only you. It doesn't even matter if that person tells you they're sorry for what they've done. Guess what? You can still hold it in your heart if you continue to replay the things that they've done and not forgive the offense. Unforgiveness is the yoke that you carry that nobody else can take off of you but Jesus Christ. Unforgiveness is the yoke that you choose to burden yourself with that nobody else can take care of but Jesus Christ. Nobody else can allow it to be bowed down at his feet and placed at his feet and given to him so that you don't have to carry that burden anymore.
So good.
And here he tells him, "But when you grow restless, you shall break the yoke from your neck." When you grow restless. You know, Esau had a right to be angry. He did. He was lied to. He was cheated. He was manipulated. You ever been at your worst and somebody knows it and they're going to manipulate you to get their game?
Come on, Holy
So
Ghost.
good.
You know, like, you ever been through a hard time and you just know that somebody did something because it was to better them and not anything for yourself? Or you've been through something that somebody did to you and you were at a moment, maybe a vulnerability, and you needed something and you took a wrong turn and then it caused unforgiveness in your heart because somebody else is ahead of you to where you should have been.
Oh, help somebody. Right? I like that.
Unforgiveness. Esau had a right to be mad. He had a right to be angry. See, God doesn't tell us we can't be angry at all. He just says, don't let the sun go down on your anger.
Let it go.
Don't let it go down on your anger. Don't let it set down deep in there and let it deal and dwell. Because when anger begins to set in those seeds, it begins to put that sense of pride that you deserve something, that you are owed something, that you have to have this to make it better. And if you don't get that specific thing in your life, if that one person doesn't come tell you that they're sorry for what they've done to you, then life is miserable for the rest of your, and you're going to make everybody else's life miserable around you.
Yeah.
Because you are owed. Esau's unforgiveness turned into hatred and caused him to want to do foolish things. In chapter 28, verses 6 through 9, it says, Now Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Paddan Aram to take a wife from there. And that as he blessed him, he directed him, You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. And that Jacob had obeyed his father and his mother and gone to Paddan Aram. So when Esau saw that the Canaanite women did not please Isaac's father, Esau went to Ishmael and took as his wife, besides the wives, he had Mahalath and the daughter of Ishmael and Abraham's son, the sister of Nebaioth. So what he did was he was like, fine, you ain't gonna bless me. I ain't gonna do what you want. If you don't care about me, I don't care about you. I'll do something just to get at you because I know you don't like it. So I'm going to play that game, and I'm going to do whatever it can take to get back at you because you hurt me. Now I'm going to hurt you in return.
Yep.
What's really sad is it really wasn't Isaac's fault. It came back to what Jacob had done. But see, unforgiveness clouds your judgment. It makes you do things you shouldn't do. It makes you say things you shouldn't say. You find yourself in places that you shouldn't be. You find yourself in conversations that you shouldn't be in. Right? And not to get into all of it, but then you begin to run your mouth like Chatty Cathy. And then what happens is you're gossiping. And you're taking all your problems to people who have no authority to take care of it.
Come on.
Good. Goodness.
Right? Unforgiveness does a lot of things in your heart. It creates that unquenchable thirst and insatiable hunger for revenge. Though your hurt may be valid, it can never validate your sin. Did you hear that? Though your hurt and your pain may be valid, it can never validate your sin. Does that make sense? Because your pain is valid, you have a right to feel angry, you have a right to feel hurt, you have a right to be upset, you have a right to feel broken, you have a right to feel like you've been wronged. But that validation of your pain does not validate you going and reacting in a way that you know does not please the Lord. You cannot allow your pain to continue to validate your actions. It doesn't work that way. You are in sin. Unforgiveness is a sin. It's just as much as a sin as an alcoholic is, as a drug addict is. Unforgiveness is a sin. Period. It is. And when you harbor it in your heart, guess what it does? It separates you from God.
Wow.
It's a sin.
True.
It does.
But so-and-so did this, and but so-and-so hurt me, God, and but so-and-so this has happened, and then this happened in my life, and this isn't why I do that, and so-and-so did this in my past, and I didn't have a good dad, and I didn't have a good mom, or I was raped, or I was molested, or I was an alcoholic, or I was a drug addict, or I was into pornography, or and that's why I'm here today. Now I have unforgiveness that rules my heart, but I've earned to be here, and everybody else needs to do what they need to do to make it right, because everybody else hurt me. That's why I became an alcoholic. That's why I became a porn addict. That's why I became a drug addict. That's why I became a shopaholic. That's why I'm a recluse and stay myself all to myself, and am in depression and anxiety. That's why I have things going on, because everybody else needs to fix the problem around me.
Wow.
See that.
All the while, I have unforgiveness in my heart and a sin that's growing to be a monster separating me from God.
Truth. So good.
Ouch.
Unforgiveness only feeds your pain, but leaves you unsatisfied. You ever ate something that you're like, like you're like, it's all right, but I'm still hungry. Like I am not satisfied. Like,
All the time.
that was all right, but I need something else. Like, I'm hungry.
Stop it.
I think my kids are all going through growth spurts right now, and they all hungry all the time. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm constantly spinning out for groceries and all different kinds of things because they are hungry. And I'm like, dude, you just ate 2 minutes ago. And I'm like, 10? We just got done. Like we're sitting at the table and it's like, we're eating lunch or whatever. I promise you, it'll probably happen today. We're eating lunch. What's for dinner? What? You eating now? And you ain't satisfied? But that's what unforgiveness does. It sets you at the table of the enemy and makes you believe that you're satisfying yourself by all the things that you're saying and all the guilt that you're holding and all the pain that you're holding. You keep eating off that plate and you still are hungry. You're asking what's next. Unforgiveness. Like Pastor Brandon said, it's not always forgive and forget. Memories choose to flood your mind whenever they want. But the ability to forgive starves the hunger for judgment and brings about the Lord's justice. The ability to forget starves the hunger for judgment and brings about the Lord's justice.
Come on now.
Unforgiveness makes us believe we can control the situation, while forgiveness releases control and gives God the ability to release healing.
Yeah. Good.
I love one thing that you said, babe, last week. Saying I forgive you is setting the prisoner free and realizing that that prisoner was you.
Okay.
That stuck with me. That was so powerful because we feel like our unforgiveness and our forgiveness to somebody else or the things that we are dealing with are literally going to set somebody else free. Like, they're going to be set free because they're going to realize what they did and then they're going to feel sorry. And I'm going to set them free right now. I'm going to let them know and have a peace in my mind what's going on and what you've done because I'm going to set you free.
Come on.
But when you truly tell somebody that you forgive them and you begin to release that in your heart, it only releases you because you were the prisoner in your own mind, in your own heart, in your own actions.
Yeah.
Matthew 6:14 through 15 in the Message. I want to read that to you. If I can find it, sorry. In prayer, there is a connection between what God does and what you do. You can't get forgiveness from God, for instance, without also forgiving others. If you refuse to do your part, you cut yourself off from God's part.
That's scary.
That's like a mic drop moment. Like, I could just walk out of here because that's the word.
Woo.
He says, if you don't forgive, I can't forgive you. Period. Now, God, I thought you had grace. I do have grace, but my grace isn't so you can just keep doing whatever you want and live like a hellion. Why would you need me? Why do we need God? Right? I mean, think about it. If we could just continue to do whatever we want, why do we need to worry about there being a heaven and a hell?
Right.
Right? Then it's all a lie. But there's a reason for forgiveness. There had to be a reason for that word, that F-bomb that was dropped on Golgotha 2,000 years ago to say, God, forgive them for they know not what they do. There had to be a reason that forgiveness was one of the most intricate words ever spoken. There had to be a reason so that we could be set free.
Yes, sir.
Not your person who's wronged you, so that you could be set free. Forgiveness is for you.
Good.
Wow. Thank you.
The only cure to unforgiveness is to forgive. You may never be given an apology or an admittance of the act done to create hurt. You may never even see the person or talk to them ever again. But uttering the words, I forgive you, in your spirit releases the chains the enemy has placed on your life for so long. Uttering those words in your spirit, I am telling you this right now.
Good.
When I was 16 years old, I was taken advantage of and I was raped by a man when I was 16 years old. And I can tell you that I have never seen that man. I have never talked to that man ever again. I don't even know what he's doing. I don't even care. But I knew that it was eating me alive, and it began to create a pathway in my life that threw me out the window. And all I could do was blame that moment and blame what everybody else had done to me in my life to make things better. I was a bitter person. And I did not love God, and I didn't love myself. nobody. I had hatred in my heart. And it wasn't until I sat down at one moment in a session for therapy and my therapist began talking to me and he said, until you release the words that you forgive that person, it will hold you till the day that you die. And I was like, but he didn't say he's sorry. He ain't never said, I'm sorry for what I did to you. And how do I know he still ain't doing what he's done? How do I know that? And how's that fair? Why do I need to say, I forgive you? I was the one that was wronged. And I was struggling with it. And he just looked at me and he looked at me straight in my eyes, sitting across from me, and he said, if you do not utter those words and allow that to come out of your heart, of the depths of your soul, you will always be bound to your past. And you will never live free. And all of a sudden, something began to break in me, and I began to utter those words, and I said it out loud. I mean, I yelled those words out loud, and instantly when I said those words, I felt that chain and that yoke begin to break off my neck, and I felt free, and I felt like I had breath, like I could breathe, because nothing was holding me. I was only holding myself prisoner. I was only keeping myself in that cell. God for years had opened the cell to my heart to say, come on out. Just like that song, I'm knocking at your door, you're going to let me in to do what I want to do. He opened the door and was saying, come on out, but I had the choice to walk out and utter the words, I forgive you. And I'm just telling you this, if Jesus can forgive sins that you are going to do tomorrow, why can't you forgive the sins that somebody did yesterday?
Come on, Holy Ghost.
So good. So good.
Forgiveness is not about the perfect apology or the perfect conditions outwardly, but it's about the condition of the heart. That's all God wants and all he needs. In Genesis 32, at the end of this, you wonder if Jacob and Esau ever really reconciled. And in Genesis 32, it says Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's camp. So he called the name of the place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, thus you shall say to the Lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants I have sent to tell my Lord in order that I may find favor in your sight. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he is coming out to meet you. And there are 400 men with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, because all he remembers from the last part in that story was that Jacob said, if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to kill you. He said that to his brother. If it's the last thing I do, I'm going to kill you. But when you look over and you go into chapter 33, go back real quick to 32, and it says in verse 9, and Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do good. I'm not worthy of the least of all these deeds of steadfast love and the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed the Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do good, and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for the multitude. And what's crazy in between this story, as we get into chapter 33, is not many of us, if you really look, see, we need to know the context of a story. Jacob, then, after he says this to the Lord, do you realize that that's the night that Jacob wrestles with the angel?
Yes.
He wrestles with the angel. And God began to speak to me about this, and he began to share with me about how, see, Jacob did wrong. And he had to wrestle with the angel to get his promise the right way because he stole his promise and wronged his brother. He did what was wrong in the first place. And yes, did God bless him? Absolutely. But I'm just going to tell you this. There are still consequences for your sins and your actions, and you have to own up to your part with God. And God made Jacob wrestle with that angel to have God bless him to do it the right way. And I believe in his heart, Jacob was even wrestling with God about forgiveness in his heart that night, that he knew he had done wrong and he was afraid because he had wronged his brother.
Yeah.
And here he's wrestling. He's wrestling and restless.
Good.
But wasn't it Esau that God said, when you become restless
Yeah.
and let it go, then that yoke will be broken off of you?
Good.
So here Esau was the one who had wrestled, but now Jacob's wrestling because he had to deal with it in his own part. See, what I love about this story is Esau never had to make Jacob do anything. It was God's doing.
Come on, come on, come on.
So good.
That's the part of realizing that God fights your battles. Quit trying to make somebody own up for their own sins and you just own up to yours and do your part.
Yes.
Just own up.
So good.
Thank you, Lord.
Show up and own up to what God's doing in you. We go over to the 33 and it said, and Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 female servants, and he put the servants with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph. And he himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times. I thought I heard in the scripture somewhere, it's you forgive you 7 times, 70. Okay, never mind. It's just forgiveness. How many times? 7 times? 70. Okay, but look at the key of this. Bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him. Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And when Esau lifted up, and they wept. And when he lifted up and saw the women and the children, he said, who are these to you? And Jacob said, these children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the servants drew near, and they and their children bowed down, Leah likewise. And it goes on to say that Esau said, what do you mean by all this company that I meet? And Jacob answered, to find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself.
Good.
What I love about this story is that it shows me that Esau had already dealt with unforgiveness on his own, and he never needed an apology from anybody to know to do the right thing from the Lord. He had a moment with God on his own, and it never talks about it, but he had a moment where he had bowed before the Lord and he became restless, quit wrestling with the Lord, and allowed that yoke to break off of his neck. And that's the power of this story. While his brother is wrestling, he is settling in the presence of the Lord. Do you understand the settling that comes to you? When you begin to allow forgiveness to come out of your heart and utter out of your spirit, that you are no longer bound, but you are free.
Good. Amen.
How can you tell that this happened? By the condition and the posture of his heart.
Yeah.
Esau's ability to forgive and deal with what happened and with God on his own caused the realization that God quenches the thirst and hunger he had in his soul for things to be right. And that with or without an apology, in God he had all he needed. I love that part when he looks at his brother and he says, brother, I'm glad that you came, but I have all I need. I don't need anything you're going to give me. I don't need your sorry. I don't need your apology, because I've already forgiven you. I've already laid it down, and I'm not going to let that hold me any longer, and neither should you. So let's get up and let's get moving.
Good.
Hallelujah.
Unforgiveness
So good.
can be settled right here.
So good.
Right here. Quit waiting. Quit waiting. Quit waiting on somebody else to come tell you they're sorry. Quit waiting for the perfect apology or how it should be said. Quit waiting for what you want to have to be done. Just let it go and give God the control and say, I forgive you. I'm sorry that I've held that in my heart. It's allowed bitterness to eat me alive, and I felt like a cancer patient, but I'm sick of sitting under radiation. I want to come out in the glory of the Lord, and I want to be made known and be made whole. I forgive you. I forgive you. Holding unforgiveness leaves you wanting.
Hallelujah.
But dropping the F-bomb leaves you filled. dropping the word forgiveness.
Yeah.
Matthew 5:6 in the Amplified says it this way. Matthew 5:6 in the Amplified says, blessed, joyful, nourished by God's goodness are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, those who actively seek right standing with God, for they will be completely satisfied. In the Message, it says it this way. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink and the best meal that you'll ever eat. Unforgiveness can keep you from right standing with God. Your desire, listen to this as we're getting ready to close out. Your desire for wanting to be right can keep you from being made right with God. Your desire for, stand with me this morning, your desire for wanting to be right can keep you from being made right with God. Your hunger and your thirst for revenge will always leave you wanting. Your hunger and your thirst for wanting somebody else to be proven wrong will always leave you wanting. See, unforgiveness separates you from God. Unforgiveness keeps you away from righteousness, which is right standing in God. When you are in right standing with God, that means that you are so hungry and thirsty for His presence that nothing else can satisfy. Nothing else. You have to ask yourself today, do I want to be right by the world, or do I want to be made right by God? Do I want to be right by the world and the standards that I deserve to be mad? I deserve to be frustrated. I deserve to have unforgiveness in my heart. Do I want to be right by the world, or do I want to be made right by God? If it's the latter, let it go. Let it go. Let it go. The only person unforgiveness is holding back is you. You. We have to become more hungry for His presence than we are for judgment. It's time to quit feeding your unforgiveness and feed your spirit by letting it go, whatever it may be. I love it because Esau traded his rightness for righteousness. Esau traded his rightness for righteousness. And isn't it funny that he says that my birthright was stolen? The right to have something, the right to be firstborn, the right to belong. And he always felt that he needed to prove that he had the right. But the problem about it was his rightness was wrong. But when he became into righteousness with God, he was made right and set free.
Oh, my. Thank you.
The only cure for this cancer of unforgiveness in your soul is the forgiveness given to you by Jesus Christ.